Alright guys, I'm going to be showing you guys a new deck today, a deck that I've been having a lot of fun playing, grinded out for a few days. I built it to play with some friends in a little more laid back casual setting. Its power level is closer to Omnath, though similar to Omnath I'm trying to optimize the deck towards its goal, which in this case is not the best way you could build this commander by any means. But it's also incredibly powerful and very strong in its own right. Kind of the 75% idea, at least for this commander, though just due to how powerful the commander's ability is and just the general power of blue-white, which is pretty much what this deck is with a little splash of red, um, you'll be able to see that this deck could definitely hold its own in most metas. Um, so I'm pulling punches in that you'll see here. This hand is obviously not so bad. It's not perfect, but it's definitely excellent. I'm playing Narset the Enlightened Master. I'm playing it in a blue-white kind of like control value type shell. I'm not really going for any combos. I'm not taking any mass land wipe spells. Not really many wipe spells in general. No extra turns and no castable extra combats off of the Narset itself. So pulling punches as far as the deck building goes. But I do get to do some really awesome things with this deck, and I'll go over the deck tech afterwards. I finally found a great home for the counterbalance engine from Legacy Miracles, which I really love playing in Commander. And I hope you guys enjoy this game, and we'll go over a deck tech as soon as I finish. So this opening hand, first of all, this deck is very land light. So 2 lands is going to be quite common. With Copy Artifact, in a multiplayer game, this would probably be fine. I almost look at Copy Artifact as a just another 2-stone that could easily be Soul Ring or Mana Crypt. If not, it's very easy to copy something else in this deck. Gilded Lotus a little later in the game. Just a standard mana rock, just as a follow-up, is not so bad, and in a multiplayer game also has a lot more potential. In one-on-one, it's still very powerful for copying the Soul Rings and Mana Crypt, but it's not as reliable source of mana. So only have 2 mana sources. However, with this Trinket Mage, if I find a third land, I'm going to be in an excellent position where this Copy Artifact can then copy my own Soul Ring, potentially. And because I have Venture the Sojourner, I can go blink this Trinket Mage and give myself a top. And considering if I hit that third land drop, I will even be able to get the Soul Ring, not the Mana Crypt, and take damage and slam Jace, and potentially be a position where I have turn 4 Jace the Mind Sculptor, Trinket Mage to block, and I'll have a Soul Ring out and the ability to copy it fairly soon thereafter. So this hand's looking pretty good. This is definitely keepable. If we don't get the land, we could definitely be in trouble. We are on the draw, which actually isn't so horrible when we're hunting for lands. Our opponent leads with the plains and no degenerate mana rock. We grab a recurring insight, which is not what we want to be seeing. I'm going to go ahead and fetch out Hollowed Fountain for no damage. In this deck, I could try to save the fetch just in case I top deck the land right here, but I feel like we're going to be playing all of our lands out immediately, and it's not really going to be a big deal. I'd rather just save a little damage. And there we finally get the third land, which is excellent. We're going to go ahead and pass back. We don't have we could have played the Selfless Spirit. I considered playing it for a second, but with this Jace, the Selfless Spirit is pretty good sometimes, especially being able to get the Narset into swing. But I probably want to craft a slightly better cards, and both the Selfless Spirit and the Recurring Insight are not so great from this position. And I want to keep my options open. I don't really feel any pressure, and getting that card out early isn't necessary, I don't think. So we draw our Counterbalance, which is excellent. This is one of the cards the deck was built around. So we're going to be definitely thinking to get that top with the Trinket Mage when we blink him the first time with the Venser. So we're going to go ahead and get the Soul Ring. He's not playing Counterspell deck, so there's no reason to necessarily go get the Mana Crypt and try to slam it to dodge counter magic on it or anything like that. Storm Herd, so we get our big finisher card here, and we're just going to go ahead and Jace, and we're going to Brainstorm. And we find a land as well as a Chrome Mox, so I decide that what I want to do here, I think about it for a while, and I put down Recurring Insight, and I put down the Sublime Archangel, and decide that I want to keep the Storm Herd potentially to maybe cast off the Narset, put back down with the Jace, something like that, instead of the Recurring Insight, since I've got the Jace engine already. And I'm going to go ahead and bend the Selfless Spirit just to develop my mana further, and I'll be able to get a second Soul Ring out without giving away the Counterbalance just yet. Fully intend to maybe Venser next turn and get Counterbalance online with the block. He makes a great play and return to dusts to get rid of 4 of my artifact mana, so good play for him. My Narset also cannot deal him damage, but that's really not a big deal in this deck. I don't plan on killing with the Narset. Going to activate the Jace right away. I see a land, which is something I like. Wither Wayfarer is typically pretty good early in the game, but at this phase, after a few turns, it's not as good. And I actually have, with this Hall of the Bandit Lord, I'm going to have more land. I'm going to have the same number of lands as my opponent, and I can't activate it right away. It's not that great. I decided I'm going to get rid of it, and I'm going to get rid of the Storm Herd, which are the 2 cards I really just don't need at this point in the game, because I'm going to use this Venser to blink the Trinket Mage, which is going to shuffle my deck. So I'm actually going to lose those cards, and I go ahead and grab the top to set up for counterbalance. He plays a Sphere of Safety, which, because I had the Cryptic Command, isn't so much of a problem. I top deck an Ancient Tomb, which is excellent. I'm going to go ahead and get Monastery Mentor out now, give myself some blockers, and get myself set to do some more damage. Going to craft again with the Jace. The Elspeth and the Treachery are possibly worth keeping if I want to use the Narset, but I decided I want the Feast and Famine a little bit more. Keeping the Treachery wouldn't be that bad of an idea if his commander didn't have Hexproof, but since his commander does have Hexproof, I think I would rather have the Sword of Feast and Famine. And at this point, I decide I want to pass on Cryptic Command instead of getting my top engine out online quite yet, because he's presented no threat to this Venser, and if I ult the Venser, I'm just going to easily be able to blow him out with Venser's Ultimate. So I'm going to go ahead and get a Mana Crypt off the Trinket Mage. He plays a card that I'm not so scared of. It just lets him go get an Aura card, reveal it, and put it in his hand. The card he reveals is Spectre Ward, which costs 5 mana. It's not really something that I'm too worried about. Doesn't really put a threat on me. He plays Academy Reactor. Now that is very threatening. I don't know if he has a way of getting rid of it, but that card is just incredibly scary. And I kind of want to get rid of the Sphere of Safety for tempo anyway and get some damage in on him. Draw a Rhystic Study and I Jace. He has a 5-drop commander, and I just put a 5-drop in his hand, and he already has another 5-drop that he revealed. So Gilded Lotus, I'm obviously not going to use to develop here because I want to get the counterbalance engine online, and I want to have that on top of my deck to be able to use my top to just counterspell him. The Venser's just about to just end this game by itself. I'm not even going to have to cast Narset this game. I don't really need the Rhystic Study so much. But since I want to keep those cards on top of my deck, I don't plan on blinking the Trinket Mage again anyway. All that's really left is the Mana Vault. Instead, we're just going to play out our top so that we can use it. And drop our counterbalance. Get our token RB rolling. Feast or Famine. And we can afford to equip Feast or Famine and then swing at him. We'll put it on the Trinket Mage so that he has to block the weaker creature to stop the Feast or Famine trigger, and he'll still take 11. And then we can use the Venser's Bounce ability on just a land so that we won't shuffle the top of our deck because we want the Gilded Lotus on top. He goes to play an Orgothian Enchantress. We're not going to reveal. And I think I forget whether or not I put the Gilded Lotus right on top, though. I think I did. And I end up checking with the top anyway since he's tapped out. I did, in fact, put it on top. I wasn't super silly. So I go ahead and counter his Sphere of Safety with Gilded Lotus. Draw. And now I have Venser ult. And I've got top, the Gilded Lotus, a Path to Exile, and I'll even be able to Time Spiral. So I'm going to exile 4 of his cards and then refill to a full hand for free with a disgusting Mentor army. Threatening to just absolutely blow him out and kill him this turn. So the writing's on the wall. I didn't even get a cast Narset this game. But that's kind of the idea of how this deck works. I'll be uploading some more games where you get to see Scroll Rack, which is even more disgusting than the top when this deck gets rolling. But in general, yes, we just want to develop our mana, get some good Planeswalkers out, and Control Engine, and one of these token-making guys, either the Elspeth, the Monastery Mentor, even Hero of Bladehold can suffice, something like that, and just kind of slowly eke out value and kill our opponents that way. I'm going to go over the deck tech real quick, and then I'll show you more games of this deck later, or upload some live or something like that. So let's get to the curve. The mana curve in this deck is really important for counterbalance. Most of the time when people feel that counterbalance is weak, it's because partially they're running tons of land, and lands are zero drops, so we don't really want a whole lot of zero drops or lands in this deck. We're only going to be running 33, which is still a very high amount. However, when your plan is to tutor up Sensei's Divining Top and Scroll Rack consistently every game for your commander's ability anyway, it's not that difficult to get your engine to start eking massive value out. We're not playing a whole ton of counter spells. I'm not even playing the Force of Will here. This is 75%. The only counter spells I'm playing are the Cryptic Command, Mystic Confluence, Mana Drain, and Counterbalance. Mana Drain being the only spell that is a counter spell that I can't profitably cast off the Narset. We're playing quite a few 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 drops so that we can pretty much, those are the kind of spots we're going to be trying to counter. 6 drops we have a few of we can counter as well. Over the top it's going to be much less reliable, but that's not such a problem. So we'll start with the 1 drops. Enlightened Tutor is obviously a staple. It finds not only the counterbalance, but it finds the Scroll Rack and the Sensei's Top, as well as just being a way to get Soul Ring and Mana Crypt in the early game. It can find a Future Sight later in the game to assemble our Future Top engine. It can go get a Gilded Lotus if we need to get very high in the mana. It can get the Cathar's Crusade if we've already got a token engine, and we can just start putting ourselves in a position where we can really deal tons and tons of damage over the top. So pretty good card there. As well as the top of deck tutors just being good with counterbalance already on the field to be able to counter a spell, as well as being able to set up the Narset. So very good card. As I said, it's a land light deck, so land tax is incredibly awesome. And when we plan on fetching Scroll Rack, getting Scroll Tax online is not that difficult. I am playing 3 plains and 4 islands in this deck. The red is just a splash, so I'm not playing any basic mountains. This is the only card that could fetch a basic mountain, and it's not worth drawing a basic mountain, which in this deck, even though I guess it would turn on the Narset, can many times when you're drawing hands with very light on lands seem like a brown land and just cause you to have to mulligan. So we're not going to be playing any basic mountains. Swords and Path in this deck, because we do want to be able to clear the way for the Narset. These cards are just exceptionally good staple cards, and when you need to be clearing the field at times to make sure your general can swing to get the value, not to mention they're pretty good hits off the general in general. It's just all-purpose removal. The Path to Exile in the Landlight deck that likes to make tokens can obviously ramp you land as well. Tithe, just another card that lets me play less lands, so that means more hits off counterbalance, more Narset flips, but still gets me potentially 2 lands in positions where I'm low on lands. The Weathered Wayfarer is even better. Yes, Expedition Map can be flipped off Narset, but that's not quite that relevant when Weathered Wayfarer can be used for card advantage, be used turn and turn again. Is an incredibly good 1-drop in its own right, and can also find my special lands against a counterspell table. It can go get Cavern of Souls, it can go get my haste land, it can go get Ancient Tomb, or it can just build card advantage by putting lots of lands in my hand. In general, in the mana base, the only really special lands I play are Cavern of Souls and Hall of the Bandit Lord. Other than that, I just have the 3 basics, 4 islands. Since it's mostly a blue-white deck, I'm going to be playing Mystic Gate as well as the Single Temple, which is Scry ability is good with Narset and just everything the deck's trying to do as well, as my tap land, as well as the check land for blue-white. I play Mana Confluence as just a catch my splash. I decided to run the Cliff Trough Retreat over the City of Brass just because the trigger is so goddamn annoying on MTGO, amongst other things. Having to put the triggered ability on the stack. If you tap it for the wrong color of mana, it's just a pain in the ass, and it's really not that important to get 1 more blue source for something like that. This could probably be something better, but it's really not so bad. It's the only non-blue-white duel I think I'm playing in the entire deck. Other than that, it's just the standard Ancient Tomb, 9 fetch, 6 duel type base to be able to get our splash off. We're almost always fetching the blue-white duels, though. I opted not to run the actual blue-light have to have 2 basics land in this deck, because we don't always have 2 basics. We don't even always have 2 lands, and I didn't want to play a tap land that doesn't give me any kind of value. Brainstorm, obviously very good with the counterbalance engine, obviously very good with the Narset, obviously very good with fetch lands, just a overall staple. Mystic Recruiter, same deal. Also very good for setting up the Narset in this deck. Great way to grab the Storm Herd to finish the game. We've got Ponder. Notably, Preordain is not so good in this deck because it can't set up Narset all that well, considering you can't leave good cards on top unless you're picking up another card you don't need. Ponder, however, is excellent, giving me the ability to shuffle, which is much better in C3 cards. Serum Visions would almost be better than Preordain in this deck, but neither one of them is needed. But Ponder is absolutely excellent. Vandoblast, one of the red cards off my splash. I play tons and tons of artifacts in this deck, so I don't really want to play an austere command or anything like that that would wipe my own artifacts. But being able to overload this for 5 and destroy the rest of the board's artifacts is hard to pass up, considering I can play it for 1 mana and kill problematic turn 1 power plays like Soul Ring and Mana Crypt as well. The Mana Vault I play in this deck, not only because I need lots of mana ramp in this deck, but because I have so many power 5 drops to go into on my second turn. Decks that want to be playing Tezzeret the Seeker, cards like Bribery, Gilded Lotus, even to some extent the Adventure of the Sojourner. There's just a lot of really good plays you can make off this, and at worst, if you can't make a power 5 drop play, this can pay for your Narset by itself on turn 3 with just 3 land drops, so it's kind of hard to pass this up, even though I decided to pass up on the Grim Monolith. Sensei's Top, as I said, this is simply one of the most important cards in the deck. It does everything. From filtering our top decks for the Narset, filtering our cards for the engine, it's just the nuts here. Soul Ring is a Soul Ring. Disenchant, when you're not in green, I feel like I want a way to kill artifacts and enchantments cheaply. This is just simply the best one you can play. You could also play Seal of Cleansing and stuff like that, but white really doesn't have as much of this in the color pie as it used to. I want these effects to be cheap, and Disenchant's just excellent. Selfless Spirit is kind of a pet card, but it can also sack itself for indestructibility to make sure my Narset can swing into a field that has nowhere to really get a good swing, as well as just protecting my general board state with a bunch of tokens or a bunch of dudes from Wrath of Gods and stuff like that in general. The copy artifact, like I said, is kind of just like a 2-rock that can copy Soul Rings. You can get a second Scroll Rack in this deck, which is excellent. If this becomes a second Sensei's Top, you can now flip your Sensei's Top to counter 2 drops instead of 1 drops, which is kind of cheeky. In general, it's just a very, very good card. Cyclonic Rift, as I said, I don't really want to wipe my own permanents. If you flip this off Narset, no, you cannot overload it. Same with the Vandoblast, they're alternate costs. But Cyclonic Rift is just an absolute blowout card, especially in the more fair decks where you're going to be using the Overlord more often, which is this one. I don't plan to be winning on turn 4 like in Storm, so instead of using this in 2 mana mode, it's going to be used in 7 mana kick your ass mode much more often. Counterbalance. This is part of the reason I really want to build this deck. The Counterbalance engine is really, really powerful in Commander if you build around it. Fairly underrated, and there's some other games I could go back and show you where I've countered 4 or 5 spells in a single round with Counterbalance. It's absolutely disgusting. It's almost even more disgusting with the Scroll Rack than it is with the Sensei's Top. You can just constantly lock players out of the game, and as this deck moves to the late game, where it doesn't really have a combo to finish the game, this is one of the major lock pieces and keystones of the deck. Mana Drain. The only counterspell I'm playing that's not castable off the Narset. It's just really hard to pass up a card that for 2 mana can give me access to some of these bigger mana rocks, especially in a mana light deck. Just let me make bigger plays, and it's kind of nice when you're playing against the same kind of people over and over again. When you pass with 2 up in blue, they know that you could indeed have a counter spell, and in fact, if you do, it's Mana Drain. That's kind of just a mindfuck in itself. Full set of Signets, as well as Felwar Stone, as well as Talisman of Progress, as well as Thought Vessel. We want to play as many of these kind of cards as we can to get up to our more powerful cards quickly, as well as be able to cast an Narset. In addition, it's going to supplement our total land count or mana source count for our opening hands because we're not playing as many lands. Scroll Rack is just absolutely disgusting in this deck. It's constantly what I'm going to be grabbing off of Fabricator Tezzeret. It's just so good with the countertop engine, so good at setting up Narset. It's so easy in this deck to all of a sudden just dump the 2 big cards you've been kind of floating in your hand that you couldn't use, end up picking up a creature in a land, and then flip 4 cards with Narset, and even though you're not hitting any extra turns, the value you get off free 4 cards off a Narset swing is just absolutely and totally brutal. If it has haste, great. Even if it doesn't have haste, it's almost even more disgusting because then you're getting 4 free spells and you still get access to cast your hand. Monastery Mentor. I mean, this is vintage power token generator. It can come down really quick. This deck has a lot of non-creature spells in it. It can get out of hand really, really fast, and there's a lot of other tokeny type things in my toolbox here to supplement this card, from the Leshnor Grand Cenobite to the Cathar's Crusade, to just make this guy go absolutely insane. He also does, the tokens do a great job of protecting the Planeswalkers I do play in this deck, though it's not a full kind of Super Friends type deck. It's really nice to have the kind of protections that you get from a card like this, and it's Ken in this deck. Fabricate, another way to find top and scroll rack as well as mana rocks. It's also nice to note that I put the Phyrexian Metamorph in its little bag of tricks here so that I can actually copy creatures off the Fabricate as well. Long-term plans, perfect setup card for Narset. Yet again, another tutor that I can use instantly with the counter top engine or the scroll top engine if I need to pick a certain card up. Long-term plans does a lot of work in this deck, and it's one of the only ways I can go get certain creatures I need if I can't find any other outs. Rhystic Study. This card could have been Windfall, but I really like the value Rhystic Study gets you when you just play it super early, especially in decks that have lots and lots of mana rocks. It's easy to just throw this card out early, and if you're not taxing your opponents down, you're at least drawing tons and tons of cards. Just general good stuff card. Time Twister. Time Twister is another card that lets you play less lands. As you see, when you're dropping a bunch of rocks, it's obviously always good to refill. A great hit off the Narset as well to let you just keep chaining. As I said, this deck will dump cards out of its hands quite quickly. There's a lot of cards at 1 and 2 in this deck, as well as 3. So it's very easy to empty your hand and then refill it with Time Twister. It's also notable that it's one of the 2 ways to shuffle cards back in my deck, which is important. The Trinket Mage, yet again, he pulls out the Sensei's Top, the Soul Ring, the Mana Crypt, cards like that, and you can also bounce him with Defensor quite well. Wheel of Fortune, same deal as a Time Twister, one of the most powerful cards in red. Wheels are just good in this deck. Dack Faden, yet again, another way to get early mana in this deck. Also filter our draws, considering there are some big clunky things in this deck to get rid of. But stealing artifacts is the main name of the game with this guy here. He's just a really, really powerful card. Chromatic Lantern is really good because we just need lots of mana rocks in this deck and we want to play less lands. Notable that when you're playing things like Hall of the Bandit Lord, which hits you for lots and lots of damage when they're the kind of lands you're getting in your opening hand, a card like this is really nice to have, as well as Ancient Tomb. Note it's not like the City of Brass, so if you get this with Mana Confluence, I guess that's technically makes the Mana Confluence just even more better. Sword of Feast and Famine is the only equipment I play in this deck. I find to be the best sword in general, giving Narset the most relevant protections as far as blocking goes. Green creatures are usually ones that are hardest to swing through. As well as getting the untap effect just being the best sword effect you can play in this kind of deck. We already have blue for card draw, so Fire and Ice isn't quite as good. There's not quite enough creatures to make Light and Shadow that good, and come on, let's admit it, Body and Mind is just really not that great in this 100-card format. Play that in like a 40-card format. More in Power Stone, just yet again because we want the early mana. Elspeth Knight Errant. Goes with our token theme, so she can not only protect herself from the other planeswalkers, trigger Cathar's Crusade, and give us more bodies, but as well she can also make Narset fly and jump her over enemy blockers as well, making her quite excellent. Here at Bladehold, yet again, sets up our token theme. The battle cry will pump all our other tokens. It feeds tokens out into the deck. Oh, and I thought about mentioning the card that I chose to play this over was Skullclamp. There are quite a few token things in this deck, but I already played tons of 1-drops, and I wanted another 3-drop instead. And in general, I think if you get this in your opening hand, it's a little bit better. Skullclamp's kind of more of a late-game card, though it's definitely worth considering. You could definitely play Skullclamp in this deck. But yeah, the Hero Bladehold is just a really, really powerful, aggressive card. With the number of 2 rocks we play in this deck, it's really easy to play this card in turn 3 and really start putting pressure on enemy players, making them take lines of play that are much better for us. So Blymark Angel, this is definitely a pet card for this deck. I have kind of a little tiny angel theme going on in this deck. I really like angels. It makes for really cool combat lines of play, because now you can sit back and leave the tokens on defense, and it kind of protects Narset, and that yet again it kind of pumps it up so that it can swing into bigger creatures and actually kind of Voltron kill somebody with this. You could choose to swing with multiple creatures and ignore the Exalted and fly over and kill planeswalkers that enemies have. In addition, you could choose to hit with just this, even if you don't have Narset out, get tons of Exalted triggers and just bash, but I really like its ability to leave the tokens back on defense for our Planeswalkers before we get something to make them big. As well as just being a 4/3 for 4 that flies is not to be underestimated. The Phyrexian Metamorph, I like that he's on my Fabricate chain. Just being able to copy any card is great. Always good in decks with Gilded Lotus to be able to go Gilded Lotus, Gilded Lotus. There's also some really powerful cards in this, creature cards in this deck that are quite good to copy, as well as opponents' creature cards that are bigger and nastier that we can always steal. Just a very, very good card. Factor Fiction, card advantage, instant speed, kind of a staple draw card. I wouldn't say it's particularly special in this deck, but this deck is full of nothing but good cards, and the fact that it's only 1 blue cost is kind of excellent. Jace the Mind Sculptor, his Brainstorm ability really pulls double duty in this deck with the Narset counterbalance engines in the deck, so he's kind of auto-include. He'll pretty much just be spamming Brainstorm. It's nice that he can bounce creatures as well and defend himself. Yet again, another good card that's hittable off of Narset and also good with the Narset ready to swing. Cryptic Command, just one of the few counter spells we play, and if you hit it off Narset, you can at least use 2 of the other modes. Thran Dynamo, more ramp, gives me another 4-drop since I was a little light there, and just really accelerates you to the back end of this curve. Archangel Avacyn, yet again, another kind of pet card, but it's really sweet that you can flash her in to protect the Narset on the swing, as well as just protect your team from wraths in the same way that Selfless Spirit does. 4/4 Flying Flash with Vigilance is also a really good blocker, in that you can block things in the air as well as still being able to swing. If you block with a different token or something, getting a flipper is just gravy, though she's good enough in just white mode as is. Cathar's Crusade, this is just token support, and it will let my token cards just go insane and help me finish a game. This is just a game-ending bomb once I've already got a overwhelming board state. Bribery, this card has just been an absolute all-star in my deck. Great Narset flip, great for stealing opposing creatures that help my token support. I had a game I played where it looked like there was no chance I was going to win. I was getting destroyed. I actually kind of played like 3 1v1s. I 1v1'd in Edric with the counterbalance engine quickly in the game, and he scooped. Some guy had a Grave Titan in a disgusting board state, and it looked like I was dead. I was able to steal his Aleshnorn Grand Cenobite and really turn the table on him, and this card's just been an all-star all around. The Mystic Confluence, a card that is just like strictly better than Jace's Ingenuity. It gets triple mana leak, triple bounce a creature, a triple draw card, or any combination thereof. Yet again, perfectly fine to hit off the Narset, but good to have another counterspell in the deck. Tezzeret the Seeker, yet again, he just further builds our mana and our board state to more disgusting spots. We chose not to play something like Winter Orb in this deck because it is 75%. We're not just trying to lock people out as soon as we get Tezzeret. Obviously, you want to make this deck as good as you possibly could. Winter Orb would definitely be in his little bag of tricks. But quite often, he's just grabbing us top or Scroll Rack or more mana. Or, in fact, untapping Rack is really nice because you can then set your Narset up and then still leave the Rack open to counter stuff with Counterbalance. Treachery. Yet again, another excellent Narset flip. Another excellent card to just get in your hand because it pretty much costs 0. Stealing creatures is good. Treachery is just about the best of this type of effect there is in the game. Future Sight, yet again, another great hit off of Narset. Good in its own right as card advantage. Filters lands off the top of our deck as well as letting us know what's on top, so that we can filter away, yet again, for the Narset. It also, since we're fetching top in this deck so often, you will very easily assemble the future top engine, and then you will just have so many cards that can't really stop you. Urbrass the Hidden, a great way to give haste to Narset as well as put enemy creatures into play tapped. So if they think they had time to put something down to block, no, now Narset's coming in ready to swing, and if you try to play a blocker, that's not going to work. As a 4/4, he does some good damage anyway. Really powerful creature in red. One of the best ones for sure. Vince of the Sojourner, it's so easy with +2 to get to his ult. His ult is absolutely game-ending. It's very powerful in this deck, from blinking lands to blinking almost dead planeswalkers to get their abilities back, to blinking Scroll Rack or top to be able to use them again, or just blinking mana rocks to get extra mana. He's an absolute total bomb of a threat. His -1 is incredibly relevant with Narset, just another way to make sure she can get through without dying. He's a really powerful planeswalker in this build. Gilded Lotus, yet again, we're playing tons of ways to get to this card quickly, and Gilded Lotus is Gilded Lotus. A Black Lotus every turn is kind of absolutely disgusting. Elspeth Sun's Champion. Elspeth is an absolute house in this deck. The +1 with Cathar's Crusade is game-endingly powerful. The -3 is a Wrath that does not hit our Narset, which is absolutely excellent, and the -7 is the kind of token support that ends a game. Typically, you're just going to have to +1 this Planeswalker a couple times, and the game is essentially over. Recurring Insight, you're not going to get the rebound if you cast it off the Narset, but drawing 6 to 7 cards for free is still not to be underestimated. And if you draw this card hard, we have enough mana ramp in this deck that you can easily get this card off between turns 3 and 5. No way you should be waiting till turn 6 unless you're missing land drops, and you can just draw an insane amount of cards and just take over the game from there. Teferi Temporal Archmage, yet again, excellent Narset flip. The untap is just absolutely disgusting. This deck, with the amount of mana sources we have that tap for more than one. Its +1 gives it card advantage. Its -10 is almost never going to happen, but its first two abilities are just about as good as it gets for Planeswalkers. He's one of the best Planeswalkers in the game. Time Spiral, one of the ultimate Narset hits. Being able to untap all your lands, refill your hand after you've just dumped everything is just absolutely disgusting. Doing it for free makes it feel like you've already cast a High Tide. One of the other shuffle effects in the deck, and just like a Recurring Insight, it's easy to get to this card quick and then refill. Aurelia the War Leader. I didn't want to play any effects that give me extra combats that flip off Narset. I didn't want to be doing the whole Time Walk thing. But this card not only looks absolutely sweet, goes with my Angel kind of sub-theme, which is really, really cool. But coming down hasted, giving Narset an extra swing is game-endingly powerful. The fact that she's getting in for an extra 6 and making all my team attack an extra time every single turn is just absolutely disgusting. Aleshnorn Grand Cenobite, again, not playing a lot of Wrath effects in this deck, but this deals with enemy tokens as well as buffing mine to kill mode. Just a really, really powerful creature that supports the deck really well as taking care of problems that I didn't want to have to solve with cards that aren't good for me in general, whereas she is just excellent. Karn, yet again, near the top of the curve. We're going to have all excellent Narset here for the most part, other than creatures. Double Exile to help me take care of enchantments, since I don't have a ton of enchantment hate support. The plus will keep him alive for days. When you have a dominating board state, he's just like almost impossible to kill. But mainly, 2 Exile Vindicates is more than good enough. Avacyn, the Angel of Hope. Yet again, this is a creature on top of the deck, but I cannot tell you how many games so far where I've got to Avacyn, Angel of Hope, and all of a sudden my whole field is indestructible. Narset can swing into anything, and my opponents have no idea what to do. I actually played a game the other day against someone playing Thrumming Stone and a bunch of those Shadowborn Apostles, and the guy was able to Thrumming Stone his Shadowborn Apostle, but because I had Avacyn out, he actually was a little choked on mana. He only had 2 mana after getting his 50 or whatever the crappy number of his Shadowborn Apostles was in his Atheros God of Passage deck, but I knew since he was choked on mana and only had 2 mana, I literally could not think of any line that he could pull off with even tutoring the Runescarred Demon out in play. I guess he had 3. He was going to have 2 after he used the first tutor effect that he could beat me, and he sits there for 20 minutes doing his combo and then tries to kill the Avacyn with some, like, destroys a creature demon, wonders why she doesn't die because he thought it was the other creatures and didn't read the top part, then goes, I've got nothing, and scoops it up. Ugin the Spirit Dragon, its minus ability is absolutely excellent in this deck. I don't have a whole lot of, like I said, true wraths or weighing to get rid of enchantments and disgusting cards like that. Ugin takes care of that, as well as getting rid of pesky creatures. Because it's a Pernicious Deed effect, I can set it as low as 5 and not lose my own Narset, which is excellent, and he does not hit my own mana rocks. With his ability being +2, it only takes 2 turns for him to be able to get to his -10, which is absolutely game-ending. Being able to drop that many permanents and play and draw that many cards is just game-ending advantage. And then my true curve topper and finisher in the non-combo deck is Stormherd. You're not dropping this for 40 tokens every game, obviously. And one of those close games that I won, I think I only cast it for like 14. But this card is just a really, really powerful game-ending finisher. Put absolutely ridiculous amounts of tokens into play. Obviously with Cathar's Crusade, and even worse with Cathar's Crusade and Urabrask Hidden, this just ends the game. So that is my deck tech here for Narset. This deck is incredibly fun to play. It's definitely very powerful, but I didn't go for the whole Omniscience or extra turns or combats or kind of maybe, I guess, a more boring game feels the same every time. If I get my Narset to swing the game's over and that's all I'm worried about type deal. I've had a lot of fun playing this deck, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Mox